podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello. Welcome back to the Daily English Premier League show on the Global Sports Podcast Network. It's been a long season. It's game week 34 of 38. It's the last game of game week in April. We are very much coming to the end of the season. This week, surely we will see Liverpool crowned as champions of the Premier League. No one thought we'd be saying this in April. We are going to look at all the other games coming up this game week as well. I am joined by Japtej.
Hello.
And I'm Marcus Ramtohul, and we've figured out, I think, possibly it was November you and I were last together recording a podcast.
Yeah, it's been a very, very long time. Busy time for both of us. Busy
time indeed. You know, you've been busy travelling the world reporting on football. I've been away as well. Nothing as glamorous, I think. But we have had an incredible season. I cannot believe, sitting here as a Liverpool fan, it's only a matter of time for that glorious 20th title. And I wanted to kick off our discussions today with we're coming to kind of a time of reflection towards the end of the season. Yes, pretty much with 4 games to go, Liverpool will be crowned champions. Yes, 2 of the teams have already been relegated, and probably the 3 that will go down are the 3 that came up. But I believe, contrary to popular opinion, this has been an incredible English Premier League season. And at this point in time, it could be a clean sweep for English clubs in Europe. I'm looking at the bottom half of the table. You've got Crystal Palace, who play Villa in the FA Cup on Saturday, who could still win some silverware despite being in the bottom half of the table. You've got Brentford, who lost Ivan Toney and still managed to bang in 18 goals with Mbeumo. And this is the craziest thing. This is why I love the Premier League, okay? Potentially, we've still got 10 teams that could qualify for Europe. 6 for the Champions League, 3 for Europa League, 1 for the Conference League. And just a quick recap of how that could play out. Liverpool guaranteed Champions League already, regardless of the results coming into this. Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest, Newcastle, City could all finish top 5. Villa or Brighton finish 6th in the Europa League. Bournemouth, 7th, could get Conference League because Newcastle have already got their place. They'll hand that out from the Cup. Chelsea could finish 8th, but win the Conference League and qualify for Europa. Palace could finish 10th, but win the FA Cup and qualify for Europa League. And Man United or Spurs, who are nestling near that bottom half of the table, could qualify for the European Champions League by winning the Europa League. I think this has been an amazing season. And I'm not just saying it as a Liverpool fan, but Japtej, you're prone to disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think that there's some bias there as a Liverpool fan, which is understandable. Listen, if my team were winning the league, I'd think that as well. I do think that probably what a lot of people are saying is that there's not been much drama in the league in terms of the 3 teams that have come up have gone straight back down. And with the Premier League, it was sort of done and dusted, by November, December time, and it's just gotten larger and larger, the gap between Liverpool and Arsenal and Man City. I think in that sense, it's not been such a fun league season, but actually what you were mentioning about the teams in like the FA Cup, I think that's amazing, to see 3 teams who you'd never expect in the semi-finals. And also, Arsenal in the Champions League semi-final, that's something that you never see either. So it's been a good season for a few different English clubs, but I think for the Premier League this season, it's not been that great. We're coming into, some teams still have 5 games left in the season, and really the only battle is for Europe, like you mentioned. The league's done and dusted, and relegation's done and dusted. So I just feel like people are probably looking at it from that angle. we'd like to see, Liverpool and City going at it till game week 37, 38, and the same with relegation. But I also think the general quality of football is just sort of on the way down a little bit, which probably a lot of people are thinking. I do feel games are more boring to watch, which probably comes into people's thinking as well.
I did see Gary Neville talking about no one goes to watch Brighton to see them play out from the back.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting the way he explained that, actually, because I agree with him. He's saying, everyone's trying to play out from the back. No one's going to see the centre-backs have the most touches on the pitch. And he's right. I feel like the most obvious time to notice it is if you're watching a general Premier League game and then you watch the Champions League quarter-final, for example. I watch Premier League games every single weekend. And then when you watch Arsenal against Real Madrid, for example, the difference in quality and tempo and excitement, jeopardy, it's just like, it's absolute streets apart. Obviously, you're never going to get, Bournemouth v Fulham as exciting as a Champions League knockout game. But I think people are a bit fed up of just seeing, passing around the centre-backs.
Well, we did also see a fantastic game, the Man United-Lyon game recently in Europe. I thought that was an absolutely amazing match and pretty much sums up United's season, the week that they've had. But you're saying about players playing out from the back and games being boring. I feel like this season we have seen the rise or the return of the rise of the out-and-out striker. We've seen Salah just absolutely tearing up the league with his goals and assists. Interestingly, for those who are going to write off City for the next upcoming seasons, Erling Haaland's second for the Golden Boot.
That's not surprising, is it?
And City, I think, are second in most goals scored. I think they've scored 66 goals this season. Not a bad season. Could still end with silverware. We talked about Mbeumo at Brentford, 18 goals. I found that quite exciting. Chris Wood at Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
So
Isak.
Yeah, oh my gosh, can't miss Isak. Isak's joint second, actually, with Haaland. So I understand this idea, okay, everyone's trying to play out from the back. Everyone's trying to kind of play that kind of modern football. But we have seen some incredible goals and some incredible strikers. Incidentally, we talk about kind of the bottom of the table. Wolves will play Leicester this weekend. They were safe quite recently, and Cunha's goals have made a massive difference to that.
Yeah, well, he's some player, and I think he's probably on his way to Man United, which will be interesting because whilst he's an excellent player, he's also factually a troublemaker. All you need to do is look at his social media antics, disagreements with the fans, the manager. It just feels like the sort of person and signing that Manchester United need to be avoiding. They need to be rebuilding their culture and, getting back on track. And Cunha is a great player, but if something goes wrong, if he gets benched and he's not happy with getting benched, he's probably going to kick off. So I don't really know what they're thinking there, to be honest.
Yeah, so I agree with this sentiment. I don't like the lack of discipline, but something else I'm seeing a resurgence of, and I'm quite enjoying, is there's that tenacity, I think, is coming back to the league. Players aren't friends with each other anymore. Players are going out and they want to go out into battle for their clubs. Keane's talked about it for years, this thing of seeing the opposition player and giving him a hug in the tunnel. You never see that with, when Arsenal were playing United in those fixtures that Vieira and him were having those bust-ups. And again, starting to see that. We'll talk about kind of what's happening with Chelsea this weekend, but Everton, I think it's a fantastic story how we almost lost one of the most important teams in the league and they've managed to turn it around. In fact, we will talk about that, but let's first of all hear about Bioniq.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Yes, Bioniq sponsoring the Global Sports Podcast Network. We are previewing the weekend's fixtures. The 12:30 kickoff on Saturday is Chelsea versus Everton. Japtej, you're covering that, right?
Yes, I will be at the bridge.
Saying that through gritted teeth. I mean, it's nice to get paid to cover a football match, especially if it's your own club. Everton, as I said, I actually wasn't a fan of this idea to sack Dyche and bring in Moyes. I've held my hands up and I say I've been proven wrong. Tricky fixture for Chelsea?
100%. I mean, Chelsea are making most fixtures currently look pretty tricky. I mean, the game against Fulham was, edge of the seat. Well, it wasn't. It was quite a boring game, but the end of the game was edge of the seat stuff. As in, it turned around so quickly, and it was a genuine must-win game. I mean, we were just talking about the lack of jeopardy, over in the season, whatever. I mean, for Chelsea right now, every game in the Premier League is must-win. Because, as you mentioned, the race for Europe, the Champions League in particular, is so tight. There's conceivably 4 teams vying for 1 or 2 spots. Liverpool, City, and probably Arsenal have got it secure. So you've got 3 or 4 teams going for that last spot. And with the draw against Ipswich that Chelsea had a couple of weeks ago, that was supposed to be their easiest game left. So, messing that one up has put a lot of pressure on the rest of the games. And if I read out the fixtures that Chelsea have still got to come in the Premier League, Liverpool, Newcastle, Manchester United and Nottingham Forest after Everton tomorrow. I mean, those are 4 of the hardest teams in the league. So tomorrow as well is a must-win game. And the mood is turn sour at Stamford Bridge. I mean, I don't know if you'd have seen on social media or whatever, but the team's been getting booed off at times. Enzo Maresca's tactics and substitutions at times have been getting booed. Fans are starting to lose faith. I see it a lot, when I'm doing our social media posts for haters or whatever. A lot of the Chelsea fans are in the comments saying, sack him, get him out of here. It's the vast majority, honestly. I don't know exactly how that correlates to what match-going fans think. I don't think that they're as, cutthroat, but there have been a lot of boos inside the stadium. So you're talking about 5 or 6 games now between now and, the end of the season that could define Enzo Maresca's future and also the confidence that he has from the fans going into next season. I don't think he's going to get sacked. There's no way, really. Even if Chelsea weren't to get Champions League football, I think the board would stick by him. But the fans could completely turn on him going into next season. So he really needs to secure Champions League football.
And it's interesting, I think we spoke last time, the early days, we had a lot of, the season's been quite a long one. We spoke about the strange recruitment, the size of the squad. And then at the beginning of the season, we were talking about, oh my God, have Chelsea got this right? Is this working? And now with a time to kind of reflect on the season and a real kind of precious time for Chelsea now in terms of results, in terms of potential silverware at the end of what's been a hell of a roller coaster of a season. You mentioned, nothing but Champions League. Is that fair?
I think that it is fair, especially given how well Chelsea started the season. I mean, if you were to look at a form table or like a table that showed you points gained in the last sort of 16 games, I'd actually quite like to see that. How many points Chelsea have gained in their last 16 games compared to the first 17, because I think the difference will be incredible. That first half of the season is the reason why Chelsea is still, 6th or 7th or whatever, and in with a chance of finishing in the top 5. I think that dramatic fall off is probably what has made things so sour. No one should have expected Chelsea to be 2nd or 3rd, but then also they shouldn't have been this bad in the second half of the season, because when you actually look at the squad and injuries, not much has changed, really. Obviously, Wesley Fofana's gone out and Romeo Lavia, 2 brilliant players. But you can't use two players as an excuse for a poor season or a poor half of a season. Arsenal had, Havertz, Saka, Gabriel for a while, like serious amount of key injuries, and their squad is smaller than Chelsea's. You can't say that two players in Lavia and Fofana have defined, a complete drop off. And there's not many other excuses. The Conference League isn't an intense competition. Chelsea are playing a team who I'd never heard of, Djurgården, in the semi-final of a European competition. So you can't say, oh, but Chelsea are playing in Europe. It's not a valid excuse. So really, Maresca doesn't have much to fall back on. I mean, it also doesn't help that the football is boring. We spent the first half of the podcast talking about boring football in the league. I can tell you that the fans at Stamford Bridge hate the passing out from the back. When Robert Sanchez gets the ball, fans, you can feel the tension in the crowd. Actually, it was interesting. One of the goals that Chelsea conceded against Ipswich a couple of weeks ago was a direct result of Robert Sanchez getting the ball and going long against Maresca's instruction. And the reason he went long is because the fans were booing and jeering and putting real pressure on. So there is a disconnect at Chelsea, and the only thing that can ease the end of the season is winning the Conference League and finishing in the top 5.
And I was going to say, you absolutely hit the nail on the head before I could get there. In terms of injury, in terms of players not being available, in terms of squad size, it's not been Chelsea's issue. But is it lack of quality? Is it the tactics? Why have Chelsea found themselves now scrambling towards the end of the season?
I think it's probably a bit of tactics. It doesn't help when your best player is, fallen off a cliff, Cole Palmer. Now, he is being used slightly differently. I don't think he's got the same level of freedom as he had last season, the start of this season. But also a lack of individual quality and an increase in individual mistakes. Christopher Nkunku's been getting chances and he's been really poor. Colwell makes a few mistakes. Robert Sanchez makes a lot of mistakes. So I do feel for Maresca in some ways. I think I probably said this at the start of the season, but the makeup of the squad is just not correct. You can't have a squad full of youngsters with no one else. When Manchester United had the class of 92, they had, Steve Bruce, Eric Cantona bringing these young guys in, and then you achieve success. If Chelsea still had an Antonio Rudiger, Thiago Silva, Jorginho easing in, the sort of Caicedos, the Palmers, the Lavias, all these guys, it would be easier because when you got a full group of young talent together and the going gets tough, maybe you've got 2 or 3 bad results, who's that leader who's bringing everyone together? And actually, that's another issue, the lack of leaders. And Enzo Maresca's spoken about the lack of leaders in his squad. He said that Reece James is getting there. A couple of others are trying to chip in. I mean, that's not what you want to hear. Reece James is the captain, and he should be already a leader. And you'd hope that you'd have a couple more leaders. But if all the squad are 21-year-old and 22-year-old, how are they supposed to be leaders? They've not won anything. They've not experienced anything, in order to become leaders. So, and that's not on Maresca. That's fully on the board and the sporting directors. So it's sort of a calamity of, a few different errors.
Yeah, I think we could pick apart Chelsea's season for many more episodes to come.
Yeah.
I wonder, not to get any ideas to go off topic, but I wonder, does this mean another heavy transfer at the end of the big summer for Chelsea? Do they need to buy in some experience? But time will tell for them. They still have a chance. They still could win a European trophy. They could still get Champions League. So there's a lot to play for, but they've probably got the hardest job of the lot. One thing that's pretty much certain, but mathematically not done yet, is that Liverpool will win the Premier League trophy. It's just, I got to say, I like saying it. It just feels nice.
We've got to give you the floor I'll ask you, now that it's basically the end of the season, Arne Slot, he's just done an incredible job, hasn't he?
Oh, he has. And I need to compose myself, and in order to do that, I think we should hear about Zencastr, and then we'll get into the inevitable discussions about this glorious football team.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out as the clear winner, with 4K video recording from your phone, AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the description to learn more about Zencastr.
Yes, do check out the link to learn about Zencastr. I will try and be as professional as possible talking about this. I still, to be honest, I can't believe it. It feels like a lifetime ago we sat here and we talked about, as a Liverpool fan, being very happy with a season of transition.
Yeah.
Where do you start? Let's start with Arne Slot coming in for Jurgen Klopp. I think a lot of things have been said already. A very different approach, very kind of pragmatic. What I disagree with, though, I think a lot of people have said, okay, there's more control. Completely agree with that. But I think sometimes people mistake that for not as intense. I think the intensity of how Liverpool play has still been there. It's done with a bit more of a measured approach. The players are still pressing together and they're attacking together. You talked about leadership. I think Van Dijk and Salah and even, Trent Alexander-Arnold, there's a lot to talk about what's going with him. Andy Robertson, a lot of people who have been there and done it and know that it's not over. Arne Slot talked recently about actually, I think it was interviewed by Jamie Carragher, and he said, pretty much the league is done now. Was there ever a worry that players would drop off? And he said, well, not this squad. These players aren't going to let it up. They know the job isn't done. And I think that's a massive factor, talking to your point about Chelsea earlier. And another thing, not to belittle at all what Slot's done, I think it's been an incredible job. He's improved upon what Klopp's done with a squad you could have argued. We talked again at the beginning of the season, lack of investment. Is this first 11 good enough? Well, they're going to win the league. So, yes. I think, unlike any other manager coming in, usually you bring in a new manager because things aren't going right. Something's not happening. And not the case with this managerial appointment. He's not starting from the bottom. He's got a good basis to move from. But credit where credit's due. He didn't come in and go, right, we're changing everything. I'm bringing in my players. I'm bringing in my philosophy. He did bring his philosophy, but he said, okay, we've got the players. I believe we have the players. And I think that's a big part of that winning formula. And then kind of the other missing piece, perhaps something I've talked about with the England international team, certainly when Southgate was first in charge, is that lack of expectation can sometimes do you a lot of favours. The pressure to win the league come, November, December, Liverpool fans were just happy to be where we were. And I think Liverpool fans, unlike the rest of the footballing kind of followers, were like, yeah, we'll enjoy this while it lasts. And then about February, we're like, oh my God, we're going to win the league.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting throwing it forward to next season now, because you've mentioned this season, you've won the league and deservedly so. I think that there could be a period of a couple of years now where Liverpool may be the favourites, because Manchester City are very much in a transitional period, far more than Liverpool. They're completely needing to overhaul the squad. De Bruyne going, Gundogan needs to go, Kovacic is getting on. There's a lot of problems in that squad. Arsenal, they're there or thereabouts, but they've never actually made it there. Liverpool are now, this is a squad that's won 2 Premier Leagues together, right? 2020 and this one. And now Arne Slot's got a feel for it. You've renewed Salah, you've renewed Van Dijk. Do you feel that next season, you said, that this season you didn't have the pressure of being the favourites. I think next season you're the clear favourites. Do you feel like they'll be able to handle it? Do you feel like that might add a different layer of complication?
I feel like next season you're going to see even more competition. I think, no one's really talking about Manchester City's season. Yes, in the Manchester City fans' eyes, for recent years, it's been a failure. But let's not forget, they have scored 66 goals this season. They will finish Champions League. They'll qualify for Champions League. they'll come back. Okay, I understand. There's a lot of rebuilding needs to be done there, but they have resources as well, and they know what they're doing. Arsenal, their players, defeat's only going to make them stronger. Players like Saka, you talk about Gerrard not winning a Premier League. We're starting to have that conversation now, I think, where you're looking at a player as wonderful as Saka going, do you know what, actually, we need to start seeing that. And I think we're going to start to see him take more of a leadership role at the club as well. And even kind of the teams that have started to push, Forest are one of the only two teams to have beaten Liverpool this season. And they've got Europe coming up. That could be a potential, what we see what happened with Villa this year. My point, I suppose, is the league is competitive. And actually, if we go back to the beginning of this season, a lot of Liverpool fans were like, hang on a minute, FSG, are we going to renew contracts? Are we going to sign players? And I feel that they will be justified in the way they've run the business this season. Yeah. And they could potentially not invest and not build whilst everyone else around starts to go, hang on, we need to get our house in order. And I think that's the danger. You could see a period of dominance, but I think there needs to be coming some sort of investment. I think it's a great squad. It's proved it's good. I still worry about how, if you lose a Mo Salah, for example, due to injury, who steps up and starts. I love Javier and I think he's fantastic and I'd love to see him start more games.
He's no Mo Salah.
But, Mo Salah, 75 goals for Liverpool this season altogether, 27 from Salah and 18 assisted by Salah. Jesus. I think that's more than half he's accounted for.
That is insane. Those are crazy stats. I mean, you're right. The thing with Salah is he's got that Messi, Ronaldo trait of just never getting injured. As well as being a world-class player, he never gets injured. I mean, that is priceless. But before we move on from Liverpool, I need to ask you your take on the Trent Alexander-Arnold stuff. I mean, listen, he's probably as good as gone. Listen, you've probably read the reports. I know as well. He's basically as good as gone. My question is, do you feel annoyed at him? Because I've seen a lot of Liverpool fans, saying, oh, he's a snake, he's this, he's that, he shouldn't be going. Liverpool are the pinnacle, he's a boyhood fan, why does he want to stay? My perspective on it is, and obviously I'm no Liverpool fan, but my perspective is Liverpool are a great club, but, we all have careers, right? You want to progress in yours, I want to progress in mine. So does Trent. Real Madrid are a better club than Liverpool. They win more trophies. Spain is a nicer country than England. To me, it's logical. If I had the option between the club I support and Real Madrid, I'm choosing Real Madrid. Do you see it as I'm annoyed at Trent, or can you see his reasoning?
I'm probably the only Liverpool fan you'll meet who'll be like, absolutely, it makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
And for all of those reasons you just said, and I feel like it's not a case of, oh, give us one more season and then you can go. No, he's at the prime of his career. He's also, bear in mind as well, this is a world-class right back who, for years in England, people have been saying, oh, he's not that good at defending, though. So why not go to Spain where no one's really going to ask you to defend?
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to be on the ball more and play more of those amazing passes that cut through, and also play with the best players. One of the things, I was gutted with the whole kind of Bellingham not coming to Liverpool, but I knew he wouldn't come because, Real Madrid, particularly at that time, Real Madrid, Liverpool, no choice. Yeah. And I think it's fantastic for England because they're getting better playing with better players, but also the intensity of the league means they're fresher for international duty. Of course, top level football is no joke, but if you can have Trent and Bellingham playing in Spain week in, week out, and knowing that they don't necessarily have to kill themselves like you see in the Premier League and then come fresh into an England squad, I will happily take that.
Wow, that is a very mature response, yeah. Because, if you look at social media and what you see from Liverpool fans, I feel like some people aren't thinking logically about, well, what are the reasons why Trent might be wanting to leave? It's not like he's leaving for Valencia or Napoli or
Manchester United, we've had with Michael Owen in the past.
This is the greatest most successful, biggest club in the world.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, and Liverpool are very good, you know, they're winning the Premier League, but, you know, Real Madrid are a different level. They just are. So,
And I think, you know, like you say, a lot of it is driven by, you know, obviously it's his boyhood team and he's from Liverpool, because actually it wasn't till very recently we didn't know if Salah was staying. And people were like, well, he might go to Saudi. Thank you very much for your service.
yeah.
And, you know, thankfully for everyone in the Premier League, not just Liverpool fans, we get to keep one of the best strikers to grace the league. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, because I feel like he has not been given the credit he's deserved for a very long time. And I don't know what else he has to do to win the Ballon d'Or or to get that recognition. And like I say, Trent's at that age where if he doesn't do it now, I don't think he's going to do it. And I think it would be great for European football. You imagine how it's a real fit for Real Madrid. And, you know, we're starting to see Conor Bradley is coming up. We know he's not the same kind of right back, but we've had people crying out for ages saying, oh, he can't defend. So if that's what you believe, let's stick a defender in there.
True, yeah. Change it up.
Yeah. And it will be a loss because he's so creative. And I think it was Jamie Carragher recently was saying, you know, okay, you need to replace his creativity. Let's get that in the midfield. Let's get some more of that going. And Liverpool have that. And I think that's where some more investment needs to come. The other thing, back to your previous question, in terms of injuries, I am worried about this back line. We saw what happened when we didn't have Virgil van Dijk after that horrific injury.
Injury prone.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, it'd be interesting to see who Liverpool try and replace Trent with, because there's literally no one who couldn't replace him at right back. And in terms of midfield as well, you know, I don't know how many creative top level midfielders are available at the minute. I'm trying to think. Seems like it's mainly defensive minded midfielders in the market at the minute. You know, Zubimendi. You know, I'm trying to think. Like, there's not much out there.
The only one that comes directly to mind is not the sort of player that FSG would sign. It looks like De Bruyne might be out of his way of City. Very creative, wonderful player.
Oh, are you thinking De Bruyne?
He won't come. They won't look for him. He's too old for what FSG
he also would never join Liverpool purely because of the rivalry with City and Liverpool in the last few years.
Some of the press, and I think it's clutching at straws because, you know, my press might be slightly skewed towards the red side, have been saying, well, you know, he was a Liverpool fan, his dad was a Liverpool fan and stuff like this.
No, I think because he'd really be ruining his legacy with Man City fans if he went to Liverpool.
Yeah.
I don't think that would happen. But hey, you've got to have some hope, right?
Yeah, and I think also generally over the years, the FSG model of recruitment has played out. Don't tend to sign big names, don't tend to sign stars, but sign players who will develop, who will mature under a manager who likes to develop players. Klopp and Slot very similar in that sense. So it'd probably be someone we've never heard of who's got some ability to kind of slot in there. It's going to take time, but in the grand scheme of things, maybe that's a good thing that Liverpool don't tend to go for a big name or don't tend to kind of search for a big name anymore.
Well, it's paid off. It's paid off for years, you know. Mane, Salah, Firmino, Van Dijk, Alisson, like, they've all paid off, and none of them were big names. Not one of those players. I mean, Van Dijk was seen as a good centre back, but none of them were, you know, had any real reputation. So, yeah, I mean, Liverpool will probably get it right. That's the thing. You don't get many things wrong. And I mean, an interesting player who, I don't know what you think about him. I think Curtis Jones is a really good player who could, you know, take on more responsibility, get more minutes. Maybe he could be the guy.
So interesting. Louis got his opinions on Curtis Jones as well. I understand what you're saying about, you know, he could take on more responsibility, he could be more involved, and he looks like he's got the ability. I feel that about Harvey Elliott. I feel like that's somebody who really deserves a lot more game time, and he's a sort of player who, when he comes on, looks hungry. He looks like he wants to change a game and be impactful. And Curtis is a fantastic footballer. I'm not sure he has that same gravitas when he comes onto the pitch.
Right.
But I think, you know, he's definitely a player you don't want to lose from that team. And we have had some scares with contracts this season. I want to look at the opponents for Liverpool this weekend. We're saying it's a foregone conclusion that the league will be won. Liverpool only need a point. They're at home. They're against Spurs, who actually could, I can't believe I'm going to say this, could win a European trophy this year, despite hovering above relegation for most of the season.
It is crazy. I mean, when you actually look at the league table, if the teams that had come up were a bit more competitive, Manchester United and Tottenham could feasibly be in a real relegation battle. I know every season there's maybe like a joke, oh, they're near the relegation zone. I mean, West Ham is 17th, so they're the last team that aren't going to get relegated. And Tottenham have 1 point more than the 17th team in the league. I mean, it's remarkable, really. And it's such an interesting position that they're in because the fans, the relationship between Ange Postecoglou and the fans has been almost irreparably broken at this point. I mean, I was at Stamford Bridge when Chelsea played Tottenham a few weeks ago, and Tottenham scored the goal that was eventually ruled offside. And Ange Postecoglou looked at the fans and he went like this, and he just stared at the fans for. Did you not hear about this?
No.
So he cupped his ears at the fans and he stared at them for a solid 30 seconds. And, all the journalists were like, oh, what's he done there? And then after the game, in the press conference, he got asked about that. And he said, like, oh, I was just wanting to hear them cheer because we've not scored a goal in ages. So he tried to spin it. I mean, people didn't really buy it, but that was the sort of straw that broke the camel's back with fans. I don't know a single Tottenham fan that still wants him, to be honest. And I've seen, from Matt Law, one of the most reliable sort of Chelsea and Tottenham journalists, has said that Tottenham are considering getting rid of Ange Postecoglou, whether they win the Europa League or not. And I think that's probably the correct decision because it does feel like there's just a damage in that bond that can't be fixed. If they win the Europa League, he goes out on a high. It's great for his CV and his career. The fans have won a trophy and they can move on fresh. And if they don't win the Europa League, he has to go because then they'll have finished 16th, 1 point behind 17th place and have won nothing. So, and Man United are in the complete same boat. I'd be interested to hear what you think about Ruben Amorim because I think that he's not getting the criticism he deserves. Actually, he's been at the club for like a long time now, and nothing's improved. What do you think?
I tell you why I disagree. I think part of the issue with football a lot of times is the lack of patience, particularly with managers. I saw this Man United squad at the beginning of the season. I saw what Amorim came into, and I don't believe there are many people out there, some Man United fans certainly, who would look at that team and say that is a Manchester United squad. I don't think he's had a chance to really build his squad, and really, he's not going to get a chance to do what everyone thinks he should do, or I certainly think he should do, which is really clean house completely. I think there's a good number of players who, fantastic footballers, Premier League standard footballers, sure. Manchester United footballers, I don't know. Yeah. Whereas when you look at what Spurs are doing at the moment, it's kind of for want of the recurring joke, it's Spurs. This is what we've come to expect over the years. I wouldn't see it past them to make the final of the Europa League and then lose to someone we've never heard of. And I think that's the difference there. He is a good coach. He's proven that. And I feel sorry for him that he left a club that he'd really built with players and a style and a philosophy to pick up the pieces of what was left at Manchester United and go, oh, this is Manchester United. Oh,
that's a good point actually, because when that whole negotiation was going on, he was clear. Can we wait till the end of the season? I want to see out this season. I want to come in the summer, sort out the squad, have a pre-season. And United were basically like, it's now or never. And obviously, understandably for Amorim, the Manchester United job maybe comes around once in a lifetime. So he had to take it. And yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, actually, about fans needing patience. I also do think that he should have done more between since he came in and now, and he's been too rigid with his system. And sometimes you have to adapt to what's around you, right?
Yeah.
You can't just lose every week and say, "Oh, but we don't have the players who fit my system." I don't buy into that. So he will obviously get the summer, and he'll get at least probably 6-9 months of the next season to see how he goes on. But yeah, it'll be an interesting few months at the start of next season to see how they do with no excuses.
Yes, that will be interesting. This is a transfer window. I'm sure plenty of clubs have got their eyes on things already because, the league is pretty much done. We know this weekend that, bar some kind of miracle, Liverpool will be crowned champions. We probably will see the 3 that came up will be the 3 that go down. 2 out of 3 have really been confirmed. We're starting to have a little bit of an eye on what's happening next season. I still believe it's been an incredible league season, and I'm not biased when I say that. Japtej, I understand if you disagree, but thank you very much for joining me again. Guys, you've been listening to the English Premier League Daily GSPN podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.